I'm Al, and today we're going to be identifying the Psi Warrior fighter. A Psi Warrior has found a way to awaken psionic energy and now uses it to augment their martial ability. At third level, you get Psionic Power, which means you get a new resource called your Psionic Energy Dice. When you gain this feature, you get a number of these dice equal to twice your proficiency bonus, and they start at a D6. And you can use these dice in a variety of ways. You regain your Psionic Energy Dice on a long rest, and in addition, you can regain one expended Psionic Energy die as a bonus action once per short or long rest. The size of the Psionic Energy Dice increase at 5th, 11th, and 17th level respectively. When you get this feature, you can use your Psionic Energy Dice in 3 ways. First is Protective Field, and when you or an ally within 30 feet of you is hit with an attack, you can use your reaction to reduce the damage of that hit by your Psionic Energy die plus your intelligence modifier. Next is Psionic Strike, and whenever you deal damage to a creature with a weapon attack, you are able to roll your Psionic Energy die and deal a number of force damage equal to the die rolled plus your intelligence modifier on top of the weapon damage you're already dealing. Lastly, you get Telekinetic Movement, and you can either target a large or smaller object or one willing creature. If the target is within 30 feet of you and you can see it, you can move the target up to 30 feet. And if it is a tiny object, you can move it to or from your hand. You can move the target either horizontally or vertically or both, and you can do so once per short or long rest for free. Otherwise, you have to expend a Psionic Energy die. So right off the bat, this is the bread and butter of the Psi Warrior, and I think it is an immensely cool ability, and it's a wonderful blend of a psionic user and a martial fighter. I think the abilities are really cool and versatile, being able to deal more damage, prevent damage, or move things around the battlefield. It has a wonderful utility and really adds a lot of character to the Psi Warrior. Getting a use of telekinetic movement for free per rest is a really nice add-on too. I don't have to spend my Psionic Energy die unless I've already used it, which means that you're going to be seeing that ability a lot more often. Also, just the idea of the Psionic Energy die is really cool. Adding that resource to the fighter, just like the Battle Master, is really neat. And having a number equal to twice your proficiency bonus means right at third level, when you get this feature, you're already having 4 uses per long rest, and it's just going to get bigger from there. Sure, it would have been really cool to see a number of psionic-like abilities that you could choose from, akin to the Battle Master, but I would much rather prefer a couple of really useful abilities like we see here, rather than a bunch of abilities that are kind of useful in some circumstances depending on your build. Sure, it's a little bit less versatility, but I'm glad that Wizards made sure that the abilities that you do have are going to be useful for pretty much any fighter you have. I also like that telekinetic movement has a lot of utility outside of battle as well, because the other two are so battle focused. Sure, you can use telekinetic movement in combat to get you to a much better vantage point, maybe on top of a building if you're using a bow and arrow or something like that, but it's much better used outside of combat during exploration of the world, since it does take a whole action to use it. Upon first reading it, the only real gripe I had was that I couldn't push an enemy with the telekinetic movement, but reading later, you do see that this is actually solved in our next feature at 7th level. Next, at 7th level, you get Telekinetic Adept, which adds a couple of new abilities for you to use your psionic powers. First, you get Psi-powered Leap, and as a bonus action, you gain a flying speed equal to twice your walking speed until the end of the current turn. Once you use this ability as a bonus action, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest or expend one of your psionic energy die. Next, you get Telekinetic Thrust, and whenever you hit a creature with your psionic strike, you can cause it to make a strength saving throw equal to 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your intelligence modifier. If the target fails that strength saving throw, you can either knock it prone or push it 10 feet in any direction horizontally. I really love both of these abilities. Being able to hit a creature and then kind of force push it away from you or pull it towards you if you hit it with an arrow. That leap ability, being able to get that very quick flying speed for just the current turn, means that it's useful in combat and in exploration, but it's not game breaking like an always on fly speed or one that's around for a really long time, which I think is a great solution to what I think is a flying problem in 5e that is starting to come up. I also really like this Telekinetic Thrust ability. For an added feature on top of your Psionic Strike with no extra cost, you're now able to do that push and pull and maneuver ability that I was left wanting for in that third level feature. But now you get it, and I think it is really powerful since it's coupled together with that Psionic Strike. So you're dealing that extra damage, and you're also maneuvering your enemies around the battlefield, potentially. At 10th level, you get Guarded Mind. First, you gain resistance to psychic damage, and you also gain the ability, if you start a turn charmed or frightened, you can expend one of your psionic energy die to end either or both those effects. Now, this is one of those abilities that isn't particularly flashy, but it totally makes sense to the Psi Warrior. Sure, psychic damage isn't a very common damage type to see in 5e, but, on the other hand, Frighten and Charm effects do start to come up at those later levels especially. So having the ability to resolve yourself with your greater mastery of psionic in the mind is a very flavorful and decently powerful ability. I do wish you got some more interesting abilities here, though. I would love to see more add-ons to those already 5 very cool psionic abilities that you already have, and something that's maybe useful both in combat and exploration, like we're seeing in those other psionic abilities. Next, at 15th level, you get Bulwark of Force. As a bonus action, you can choose a number of creatures up to your intelligence modifier that can include yourself, provided they are at least within 30 feet of you. For the duration of 1 minute, all those creatures gain the benefit of half cover. Once you use this bonus action to grant this effect, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest or you expend a psionic energy die. So for free, once per long rest, you are granting up to 5 creatures, if you have a 20 intelligence, half cover for pretty much an entire combat. I think this is a very strong ability, and it's really cool. I kind of see this flavor that you are mastering that psionic barrier protective ability that you got at 3rd level, but you're now able to do it on multiple creatures. And that's really cool to be able to do it for free, and you still have the added utility of using your psionic energy die if you need it. Not to mention, at 15th level, you have 10 psionic energy die, so you're going to have more than enough to be able to recur this ability that basically grants +2 to AC to all of your allies. Next, at 18th level, you get Telekinetic Master. You learn the telekinesis spell, and it requires no components for you. Additionally, intelligence is your spellcasting ability modifier for it. When you are concentrating on this spell, you can use a bonus action to make a single weapon attack. When you cast this spell, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest or you expend a psionic energy die. So this is your kind of capstone ability for the subclass, and it's a fairly decent one. Being able to cast a 5th level spell for free or expend one of your die to cast it again is really powerful. It would be kind of weird if this class didn't get it, because the telekinesis spell can kind of do a lot of what the Psi Warrior can do in their features, like moving yourself or other creatures around, but it can do it much better. So I'm really glad that the Psi Warrior is able to get this spell and able to cast it theoretically a lot of times per day. It has a lot of in-combat utility, but also a decent amount of out-of-combat utility, being able to move yourself or your allies vertically, horizontally, or otherwise, and being able to move up to 1,000-pound object is really useful, particularly in exploration. If you find a large gold hoard, or you have to move this huge magic orb for whatever reason or another. I think this is a fairly decent ability, even though it comes really, really late in the game. So those are all the features for the Psi Warrior. If I were to rank this fighter subclass in relation to the other fighter subclasses, I would give this one a 5 out of 5 cauldrons. I really like this subclass. It has a really strong flavor and narrative, but it's also very mechanically viable, and it adds a lot of fun to an otherwise somewhat boring class being so martially focused as the fighter. Sure, a fighter can be one of the most interesting D&D characters, but at the same time, a fighter's combat rotation, what they're doing every round, can get really boring in 5e. So having those psionic abilities really buffs up the interest value of the fighter, which I can always get behind. My only real gripe with the subclass is that 10th level ability. I just wish it was kind of a little bit more interesting, but I can't complain too much because that psychic resistance and those condition ending effects are fairly decent. So what do you think? Do you agree with my 5 out of 5 rating, or would you rate it lower? I would love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, please consider subscribing or just giving it a thumbs up. Either would be greatly appreciated. Otherwise, if you like this kind of content, then I'm delighted to tell you that it's actually part of a series that Ben and I are doing called Identify, where we go through all of Tasha's cauldrons of everything subclasses, and we give our own personal feelings and rankings on each of them. I'll link the playlist up above there. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you on your next short rest.